Well, welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
Well, howdy and yippee-ki-yay, y'all.
Alan Seiler,
I was expecting you to say something very different at the end of that.
Yeah, on the
I know,
Golden
right?
Girls, when it's Blanche, she says yippee-yi-yo KY. So I'll go with that.
Hi,
didn't even introduce you. We didn't even get that far.
Introduce you.
I was ready.
Everyone knows who we are at this point.
Yeah.
Welcome back,
Hi,
everybody.
Veronica. Hi.
All right.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
we have some news this week, Alan.
Hey, we've got some news this week. First of all, I think the announcement just came out today. There are 2 Emmy nominations for Star Trek Prodigy for excellence in children's programming.
Awesome.
The first is Kate Mulgrew has been nominated for a multi-role voice performance because she plays both in the flesh Janeway and holodeck Janeway, which are basically the same voice, but
Right.
it counts as 2 different roles. So
Yeah,
she's
absolutely.
nominated for that, and for script writing for Devourer of All Things Part 1.
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
So that's pretty super neato.
Yeah, I
And-
always find it satisfying when a show I like that got canceled gets like posthumously nominated for Emmys and awards. It's like, yeah, I
love
told
it.
you.
Isn't it the best?
Take it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and it's
also-
funny when you say it's a children's show. I forget it was kind of geared toward kids.
Yeah. And also, the show's composer of Strange New Worlds, Nami Melumad, has 2 nominations. And
Hey.
this is for her Pixar show, Dream Production, which is she's nominated in Outstanding Show Open and Outstanding Music Outstanding Music Composition.
Yay.
So yay, that's super awesome.
And people may remember that we had Nami on our show once.
We sure did.
Yeah.
She was
She
a
was-
delight.
An absolute delight. Loved
Yeah.
her.
One other thing I was going to say about the Prodigy with Kate Mulgrew voice acting, you can always tell good old school actors who know how to do true voice acting.
Yeah.
Sometimes nowadays, you'll see a movie where they'll just grab a famous actor and plug him into it. You can tell they're not the best voice actors. And I'm sure back in the day when you had things like Batman, the animated series, and especially Gargoyles, the number of Star Trek people, including Mulgrew, on those shows was phenomenal because they're such great voice actors and really, in addition to being live actors.
Right.
In our next little story, an interview came out today where Jonathan Frakes promises that there are moments of levity in the upcoming series, Star Trek Starfleet Academy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he says that moments of levity is something that he looks for in every production that he helms. And so he's letting us know that they are there in Academy. So that's good news, I suppose.
Sweet. Yeah.
I do like a little levity in my Star Trek.
Okay. Just under 2 months, we'll be able to see it for ourselves.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's kind of funny every time now we talk about any Star Trek and then we throw out the words humor or whatever, that there's always kind of this knee jerk for some like, oh, what does that mean? Like, and Charles, you pointed out, it's not like Star Trek has never had humor, but because of things like Strange New Worlds, sometimes people get mad. I could see somebody being really mad just because he said that. When I saw the article, I was like, huh. And I'll be honest, I looked at it like, hey, what do you mean there's a bunch of levity in here? So I had to read to make sure it wasn't too much humor.
Moment of
Right.
is what he said.
Right. And finally, we've talked about this on a previous show, but I thought I'd give out a reminder for people that Lego, which has done licensing deals with so many different properties like Pirates of the Caribbean and Harry Potter, and especially Star Wars, has finally gotten into the Star Trek game.
Okay.
And they have released the images and the promo videos and everything for their new model of Enterprise D. And this monster is 3,600 pieces. It comes with 9 minifigures of the main cast plus Guinan.
Okay.
And then if you pre-order, you also get Ensign Rowe. It comes with
Thought
2
you also
shuttles.
got a shuttle with the pre-order.
What?
I thought it was the shuttle came with the pre-order. And
Well,
it's
it comes with
separate.
2 shuttles.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's around $400, which is about average for a Lego set of this size.
Right.
And it is coming out on Black Friday. Now, we don't have a show next Thursday because that is actually Thanksgiving Day. So I thought I would go ahead and say tonight, if you're in the market for a massive Lego Enterprise D, it comes out next Friday.
Okay.
I wonder if there's gonna be a Black Friday deal.
No, Lego does not do deals. The deal is you can buy it on Friday.
Yeah.
That's the news for this week.
Awesome. Well, Keith, do we have some This Week in Trek this week?
We do a couple of things this week in track. One of them just can't avoid. The 17th of November, 1966. So cool when you think about it. Way back in the day with it. Ed Sullivan was on and all this kind of stuff was going on. This was the premiere of the 2-part Star Trek episode, The Menagerie.
Okay.
Yay!
Obviously famous for being cobbled together from the cage, which is still very interesting. I always find it interesting because later on in the episode, the naked time, when there was a question about, they asked, had there ever been a mutiny in the history of Starfleet? And Spock said no. And I always think about the Menagerie. I'm like, well, what about what you did? Stealing the Enterprise? And remember that poor schlub he threw across the room and all that kind of stuff?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and people would use that as a criticism of Discovery when it came out because, remember when Spock said there was never a mutiny? He's like, yeah, well, remember when Spock stole the Enterprise? He didn't count that either. So maybe his definition of mutiny is a little bit loose.
Right. I mean, you gotta give Roddenberry Company credit for doing that, taking the pilot and carving it up and creating another show that people like. Then that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, and obviously, the Menagerie is the basis of Strange New Worlds. Like that show wouldn't exist if the Menagerie had never aired.
Yep.
Absolutely. 1 year later to the day after the Menagerie, in 1967, same day, 17th of November, was the introduction of Spock's parents in Journey to Babel.
A little episode.
Yeah, really great episode. I still to this day wonder how you could be captain of a ship and not know that your first officer is the son of the ambassador of probably the most important planet in the Federation outside of Earth. But hey, let's go with it.
Yeah. Spock's a private guy. He doesn't talk about things.
Yeah,
That's right. Just look how long it took us to find out he has a half sister. Come on.
Oh no, don't say that. Good point. And I had posted about this elsewhere last week, and I was just reviewing some of the stuff at Journey to Babel. I had forgotten how many aliens they had doing little things like walking the corridors of that episode.
Yeah.
And it reminds you of the attention to detail they had way back in the 60s. And you could tell that was a show they were taking seriously.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty good stuff they did. Just jump forward now a couple of decades. 18th November 1993. Well, this is important for a whole bunch of reasons. That was the first day of filming on a TNG episode that nobody knew was going to have this many legs, but that was Lower Decks.
Oh,
Yay.
TNG.
I always loved that episode, even before it had a animated series tied to it.
Right. Same here. Yeah.
And that was one of those two, like for years, fans have been saying, oh, a great Star Trek spinoff would be Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Do a Lower Deck show. And now they have. It's coming out.
Right.
Come and gone. Yep.
Yeah. Unfortunately. And it turned out to be so much better than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Then jumping back in time, back in 1964, I found this very interesting. The 20th of November 1964, there was a renewed script for the pilot of the original series, The Cage. Anybody want to know what the name of the captain was at that time? I didn't know this.
Was it April?
No.
Or was it winter?
That's ding, ding, ding.
There's
Yes.
several different drafts out there.
Captain James Winter is what the working revised script had. I didn't know there was a name Captain Winter at any point.
Yeah, I think it's in the Making of Star Trek by Stephen E. Whitfield, I think.
Ah,
has
okay.
that information.
It's always funny when you look at names like that, April, Winter, USS Constitution stuff. When you get the thing you get, then you get into this thing where you think it never could have worked without anything else. You know, it's like part of you is like Captain Winter. The show would have failed with a name like that because Kirk is so cool. It doesn't really matter, but you kind of feel that way.
Right.
This is just for kicks. Talk about humor and levity. 21st of November, 1968, another episode of the original series that nobody knew was going to have this many legs. And you know where I'm going to go with this one. First day of filming, going to crack my knuckles and jump for joy. Got a clean bill of health from Dr. McCoy.
Herbert.
It was the space hippies. Yeah, and nobody knew back then that thing was going to last. I read an interview with Leonard Nimoy and them, and Nimoy
To be
was
clear,
like,
it's not lasting because it's so good.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for clarifying, because yes,
Yeah,
it is not the same as Journey to Babel.
good point, right? And then Nimoy and them were saying that when they were filming it, they were like, "What the hell are we doing?" And it was also so incredibly on the nose with straight up hippies, because Star Trek was always allegorical, but when you straight up lift the cultural zeitgeist of the time. But yeah, you're right, Alan. It's infamous. It is also one of those that's so bad it's funny. I enjoy watching that episode. Unlike the one you posted about, Charles. Oh my God, with the Gorgon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the children shall lead.
Yeah, I don't ever need to see that again.
Yeah, Way to Eat. I'm not Way to Eat. Yeah, Way to Eden was basically like youth culture as described by a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
Right. And the last one for this week, on the 22nd of November, 1968, another infamous episode of Star Trek aired. That was Plato's Stepchildren.
You started off with some great episodes, Keith, and you landed on some not great episodes.
Yeah, there is so much more to be said about this episode than you may think. Of course, it's one of the first interracial kisses on American television. It's not really the first.
It is not the first.
No,
Right.
it's the first scripted interracial kiss between a white person and an African American person. On
Wow.
television.
Yeah. There you go. That's true. That sounds like a football statistic, NFL
I know.
statistic, right? And of course, there's so many famous things. The network was completely freaking out that the South was going to like riot, and that Southern stations weren't going to show it.
Mhm.
And I'm sure everybody knows the story that Nichelle Nichols and William Shatner literally botched every single take because the network wanted to film 2 takes. A good one, quote unquote, where they kissed each other, and a good one where they didn't kiss each other.
Right.
And they just did take after take after take that was bad, including the last bad take is William Shatner crossed his eyes so badly they couldn't use it. And researching this, I read something today I didn't realize. Nichelle Nichols said she went to the little filming or the little gathering where they would go over the dailies and look at all the stuff. She almost never did that. And she said the crew was cracking up at how badly they kept schlubbing the lines and making the kiss not work where their lips didn't touch.
Right.
And finally, she said the director and the thing, they said, the hell with it. Just roll with it. And they were kind of pissed at her and Shatner, but then they thought it was so funny. And they're like, whatever, let's just film and see what happens.
Good.
And the South didn't burn.
Yeah.
Another thing about this, of course, I'm sure you know, is this is one of the infamous episodes, or one of the many episodes of the original series banned in the United Kingdom for quite a long time. This episode wasn't shown in Great Britain until 1993.
Wow.
Along with The Empath and Whom Gods Destroy and Miri, which was shown one time, but not until the 70s. And the BBC at the time said that Plato's Stepchildren, along with these others, dealt with already unpleasant topics such as madness, torture, sadism, and disease. And it is, even by, I think, even modern standards, if you think about a primetime show where they roll out a brazier full of hot coals and a poker, and the guy's like going to whip somebody, even nowadays, that's pretty intense. I can only imagine how that landed in the 1960s on network television.
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty wild. And with the discussions of S&M and torture, that's this week in Star Trek history.
Great. Well, we will drop some comments before we get into our topic.
Well,
Cool.
I think we better, because people are already chatty.
Nice.
Oh my
All right.
goodness. Matt says, howdy, partners.
Howdy, Matt.
And Crystal Long says, hi.
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 Mark says, Billy Claiborne didn't die.
Okay.
Wayne
Oh,
says,
Spectre of the Gun. I had to catch
yeah,
that.
yes, exactly. Wayne, hey, right on topic. Wayne says, howdy, y'all.
Howdy, Wayne.
Matt
But Wayne?
says, what? Yes, go back.
I said, hi. I said, hey, Wayne.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Okay. Matt says, but are half the episodes comedy episodes talking about Academy?
Right.
Yeah.
Moments of.
Mark says, when the original Enterprise, this is Lego related, when the original Enterprise comes out, I'll be the first to order. I wonder how they are going to do the nacelle supports. That's a very good question. And I know that they will work it out, because in the D, one of the biggest problems they had to figure out was how to have the saucer section detach. And because, that ship is incredibly front and top heavy. So how they could make a display stand where it would stay in place with or without the saucer section.
Okay.
So that's a very cool thing.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
Matt says, I was wondering how Keith was going to connect Ed Sullivan with Trek.
I was waiting for a Beatles reference.
Mark says, Winter to Constellation does not roll off the tongue like Kirk to Enterprise.
I disagree.
Kirk
No, I
Douglas.
think you're right, and I think they figured that out in the '60s as well, and that's why we have Kirk to Enterprise.
Yeah.
Wayne says, definition of mutiny, an open rebellion against the proper authorities, especially by soldiers or sailors against their officers. So, to the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been a mutiny.
Spock stealing the ship wouldn't be a mutiny?
I mean, like, Burnham was classified as a mutineer.
Oh, crap. I forgot about Burnham.
Yeah, but she was classified, so
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
count.
She was classified as mutineer and then classified.
That's right.
And then when she went to prom, she was classified as wearing a boutonniere. I don't know.
Oh,
Stupid joke.
oh my God.
Stupid
But
joke. And then Wayne wraps us up by saying, but they got pretty close.
Interesting, Wayne.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, this week we were going to talk about space westerns, and specifically because I mean, the western genre was such a big part of television when Star Trek debuted, and a big part of the way Roddenberry sold the show, and a lot of the western in Star Trek's DNA. Not even in just the regular episodes, but also, I mean, obviously you have the ones that lean into that heavily, and that's throughout the show. There's Western influences still to this day crop up in episodes of Star Trek. And so I just thought it'd be fun to talk about the space Westerns in Star Trek, but also outside of Star Trek, how space Westerns, how those two genres have merged together through other franchises as well. And I mean, just to kick it off, I mean, the early, like, you know, that there's that early period of TOS that we like to talk about that we're big fans of. That, I mean, there's a lot of the Western just in Star Trek's DNA, where you've got, you know, Captain Kirk's the hero and Mr. Spock is his sidekick, and you've got, you know, the girl back on the ship who is pining for Captain Kirk. You've got the old country doctor.
The old country doctor.
Yes.
Right.
And originally they even had little leather sort of holsters for the phasers when they would beam down to planets.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the phasers. One of the things I put in my notes is, of course, the phasers. They're guns, and you could, of course, talk about not 20th century guns, but they are absolutely homages to old school revolvers. And I have, to this day, and I know nowadays they won't go for it, I still prefer the pistol grip phasers of the original series over any version I've seen since then. And you're right, Charles. And even when you look at the original pilot with the cage, you can see slightly different harnesses they had for their weapons, but of course then they had those really cool straight up gun lasers in the original pilot.
A little more Flash Gordon looking with the tools.
This is a total aside, and maybe this is a topic for later on, but you know what show had really, I mean, and I'm not a gun fan, but you know who had really great looking guns?
Who's that?
Lost in Space.
That's true.
Oh,
and
that's
that is
true.
both the handheld and the rifle. They looked so great.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
And Lost in Space may come up again.
It may.
Yeah.
I was thinking the very same thing.
Right.
Yeah, well, I know that to your point about the whole Western thing, that when Gene Roddenberry first pitched it to the network, and I forget the other guy who was actually in the room who pitched with Gene Roddenberry. I forget who was there. Might have been Solo. But anyway, there's dispute because Roddenberry was a cool guy, but people say he took a lot of credit for things. Because I forget the guy who was in the room with him said Gene Roddenberry was actually a very shy man in real life, very shy. And they said that, again, I'll have to find the guy. He said he was the one who told them it was Wagon Train to the Stars, not Gene Roddenberry. But however, to your point, Charles, at the time, it sold it. However, one of the things that that kind of undid the show was when they got the first pilot, The Cage. One of the things some of the suits said was, I thought you said this was a Western in space. And they basically were like, where's the pew pew? Where's the guns? Where's the Western action? And they're like, this thing is too talky. So they gave us Where No Man Has Gone Before.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the early episodes that sort of followed Western formats. I mean, Mud's Women is a good example where he's, bringing mail order brides essentially to settlers. Only they're not in the West; they're on a distant mining outpost.
Well, I mean, look back at the time frame that we're talking about. There were not a lot of like serialized science fiction shows on the air, but you know what was?
True.
Westerns. And that is something that the American viewing audience at that time really understood.
Right.
So in order to get this, relatively more expensive show than anything else that networks are producing to air is to frame it in a way that will sell to the American public, but also to sell it to the American network suits, because they are the ones that have to take the risk on, putting this thing out, spending money on it, all that kind of stuff. And I think that it was, if you're going to do sci-fi in the mid 60s, you got to do it in certain ways. And when you're talking about action adventure, that's a Western.
Yeah, and Wagon Train is a pretty apt comparison if you're trying to sell the idea to somebody.
Yeah,
Wagon Train was a very
absolutely.
popular show. You have the leads of the Wagon Train, but also the Wagon Train was large enough that guest characters can come out, that so-and-so who's part of the Wagon Train become a part of the story for a week and then disappear back into the Wagon Train. It's really like the Wagon Train is like the starship moving through the West, having adventures instead of through space. So I think that's a pretty good pitch line to quickly describe your show to, network executives.
And following on what you and Alan were saying, nowadays the term may have different meaning, but back then when Kirk said space, the final frontier, they were absolutely thinking of frontier in terms of Westerns and Western towns on the frontier.
Absolutely.
And actually, and I remember even in Deep Space Nine, which we'll get to obviously, which is also the other allegory. I think they said they thought of it as the rifleman as a compared to Star Trek, the Wagon Train. When Dr. Bashir first came on the episode, on the pilot, he actually said that he chose it because it was frontier medicine. He was going to be out there. So he was definitely kind of pushing you're on the edge of, what, apologies to natives, uncivilized territory and unexplored space. So absolutely the theme kept going on in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Grab some comments before we get too far away from them.
Yes, absolutely. So it looks like we have a couple of new, at least people that I haven't seen before. And one of them is Callie, we talked to earlier. Hi, Callie. And now, no, that was that?
It was Callie. She changed accounts. Go right ahead.
Oh, good grief. Okay. So now we have Callie Soros, who says the idea of Western culture was exploration. So it makes sense. Yes, absolutely. And
it does.
Yeah. And so basically the Enterprise is out, on as Keith said, out on the frontier. And, that brings up the whole notion of being attacked by the Indians and all that kind of stuff. And I say Indians because that was the term back in that day.
Right.
And, that's what we get with Klingons and, all these other crazy aliens that they would run into.
Yeah. And I think it makes a lot of sense to move the colonialist stories that we grew up with, like Westerns and so forth, into space, because you're pulling it out of that historical context. Right? Because even now you're watching a Western and we're rooting for the heroes. Well, they're invaders in these people's lands, right? So you see, the more you learn about the actual history of what happened, the more you have sort of to chew on watching Western stories. But you take that story and put it into space, you can change the context and still do sort of the fun parts of a Western story without, having to, without that historical context that we have in the real world.
Yes. And that's, we have done a whole show on the Prime Directive, but that's an angle that I don't think we explored in that discussion. And that is how that one principle makes Star Trek different from the other Westerns that were happening, because you have this policy of non-intervention. You have this policy that's supposed to engender respect for other cultures. And you're basically not invading, even though you can probably say in some places that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah. And they certainly play with those themes in Star Trek. But the idea is it's a benevolent colonialism where we're going into space to explore and to learn. But as Kirk says in Errand of Mercy, like in Mirror, like our number one rule is that your world is yours.
Yes. Wayne tells us that it was indeed Herb Solo who was with Roddenberry.
Thanks,
I'm pretty
Wayne.
sure I misspelled his name, but no, I don't think you did.
You spelled it right.
Thanks, Wayne.
Look at that. You spelled Herb perfectly. Mark says, Major Kira said, what you call the frontier, I call home. Yeah. That was a Bashir moment.
Yeah, and that's one of the great ways that they can play off of these sort of stories is, I mean, Kira is as much a part of the show as Bashir is, obviously, and what he sees as the the frontier and
medicine.
primitive and out here in the
Mhm.
wild. And she's like, this is where I'm from. This is where I live.
Right.
I love that scene. That told you so much about those two characters right at the
Mhm.
very beginning.
Yeah.
And then Callie follows up by also saying misunderstood cultures was a Western tradition in that genre of fun/TV.
Mhm.
Yeah, good point.
Absolutely. And now, Keith, you brought up Deep Space Nine, and something that I heard Dana Visitor say several times
Mhm.
was that she played her character, Kira Nerys, like John Wayne. And that's one thing that she loved because
Interesting.
being, a young actress in the 80s and 90s,
Mhm.
she didn't get that opportunity a lot, right? She wasn't allowed to swagger around and punch people and, curse them and that sort of thing. But she was able to play the swaggering John Wayne type character on Star Trek rather than, the lead's girlfriend or,
Yeah.
whatever other sort of stereotypical female she had to play, and the way TV was at that time. So that's something that she treasures about Star Trek, that she was able to play like a John Wayne hero on television back in, starting in 1992.
It's funny. I've never knew that quote.
Yeah.
But as soon as you said that, I have always noticed that Nana Visitor walks a certain way as Kira,
Mhm.
especially in the early seasons. She does
Yeah.
have a walk about her. Like she's
Right.
got an attitude, and she does.
Or
And
the
she should.
costume's too tight. One or the other.
Well, I think Kira does have a swagger and an attitude,
Absolutely.
especially from the start. But even as the character progressed, I mean, and I wasn't aware of it at the time when I was 12 years old watching the show.
Mhm.
But I mean, that's not an archetype that you often saw.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also going back to the Western theme on that show, even though his name is Constable, what is Odo but the sheriff
Yeah.
or the
Town
marshal
sheriff.
controlling
Yeah,
the town?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Deep
Right.
Space Nine is very much the old West town. There's a saloon and the doctor's office and the
Yeah.
sheriff's office, and
Yeah.
it's all those things, but transported into a space station.
Yeah.
But I think it works incredibly well.
They even have an assay office on Deep Space Nine, so that
Right.
when people would come in what they think is valuable gems or whatever, they go there to get it assessed or assayed, just like gold in the Old West. You'd have an
Right.
assayer's office.
Yeah.
I had never thought of that angle before.
Yeah.
That's good.
And then an episode in particular that really strikes me as having a Western theme to it is the episode Progress, where Brian Keith plays the old man, the old Bajoran man on the moon
Yes.
who doesn't want to move, and she has to go be the one to try to get him to move. And then they have that wonderful that episode came out before Duet, and I think it's up there. Maybe not Duet level, but almost. Like that was when DS9 really started showing what it could do.
I agree.
But I think that episode very easily could have been, an episode of The Rifleman or whatever,
Wow.
Absolutely.
You guys are doing deep pools. I hadn't thought about that on that level.
You had a deep pull of your own there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point with that. Ask Wayne to talk to you guys sometimes about the conversations Wayne and I've had about colonialism and what the term colonial means. And I thought it was interesting what you said a minute ago about, and it's always very interesting. One of the things that always makes me laugh from the Kelvinverse movies is the one where Pike says, remember he said Starfleet's not a military, it's a peacekeeping armada, which is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. But I do like what you guys are talking about, how Star Trek did a very weird, interesting thing of threading this needle between a military show and a liberal show and a show about colonialism, but a show about benevolent colonialism, and also incorporating Westerns, because I love Westerns still. But I will tell you, looking around, talking to people, seeing what's on social media, a lot of people younger than me just don't like Westerns.
Sure.
And some of it is the mindset of what Westerns represent. But I still love Westerns because take away all the other negative stuff, it's still people against the elements themselves.
Right.
One man or woman against an entire town. There's even an episode of Deep Space Nine where Odo kind of stands alone. That's kind of like High Noon.
Yes,
And I like that.
absolutely. And of course, then you have a whole episode called The Magnificent Ferengi, which is a clear pull from the Western oeuvre. Now, I just had a follow-up to what Keith was saying, and then I interrupted myself, and
That's great.
terrific. Oh, I think I don't know that it necessarily has anything to do with what Westerns represent. I just think it's kind of seen as a very, very passé form
Mhm.
Like I mean, I was going to say nobody does westerns anymore, but when they're done in modern like format and they're done really well, they have worked, but it's
Mhm.
just not a prevalent thing anymore. And I think that it just comes off as old fashioned.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, if you do it in the old genre, where like what Charles said, if you do it in like, well, frankly, white people going out into the West and taking over, yeah, people hate it. But you're right. When we start having things like Unforgiven and stuff, which show different types of Westerns, I agree with you. And it's unfortunate that passe. I think there's a lot to still be mined there, but unfortunately, yeah, studios are always scared about Westerns nowadays.
All right. Elaine has joined the fray.
Hey, Elaine.
And she says, when I saw the subject for tonight's show, I had two thoughts pop into my head. One is Worf in Fistful of Datas. Yes.
Yes.
And two is Doctor Who's The Gunfighters and the Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon.
I am unfamiliar with those.
Oh, Keith. Oh, Keith. It is one of the most glorious stories in the history of Doctor Who.
Really?
I actually do love it. Most people hate it. And then Elaine also says, I don't think I thought of any deeper about it than that. Well, that's what we're here for.
Right.
That's our job.
And I'll just as an aside, real quick, if you ever hear a British person making fun of an American doing a British accent, just have them watch old Doctor Who anytime an American character shows up, because some of those American accents are awful.
Yes, yes.
Some of them are good. Some of
them.
them are passable. But then there's that guy in Tomb of the Cybermen, which is so cartoonish. Right. Oh my gosh. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, jumping ahead a little bit to like the more modern Star Trek, the third season of Discovery, the second episode, they had a very Western story when the Discovery crashed on the planet, and they had to go to that one little outpost where the little Corridan guy lived, and the bad guys found him there in the saloon, and it was very, very much in the Western mold.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, but we need to jump back a little bit, right? Because we haven't really talked about the episode that we have as a backdrop, have we? We haven't. I've been dying to like show this.
And this is, of course, Spectre of the Gun.
Spectre of the Gun.
Which I love. I love Spectre of the Gun. And if you've not seen it, it's they're transported to this planet where like it's like a very surreal Old West town, and they're having to live out the story of Wyatt Earp and the OK Corral. But really the aliens just give them what they need for the story. So as you can see, like the buildings have facades and no interiors or no walls and that sort of thing.
I thought that was so clever.
It is very cool. And it's not original. Like they did the same thing on West of Mars, the Lost in Space episode. And I think they're both inspired by the movie Red Garters, if you've ever seen that.
I have not.
Red Garters is a movie musical from the 50s that's very, like, if you see the pictures of it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's totally it. But instead of just red, it's a lot of different colors. It has a very bold color palette, but it does the same sort of thing where you'll have the table in the saloon and there's no walls and that sort of thing. It's a very cool movie.
Yeah. That was one of the Lost in Space episodes that I was going to mention, actually.
West of Mars.
Oh yeah.
Well, do we talk a little about Spectre of the Gun first, or go?
Yes, please do. Yes, please do.
Yeah. So, I mean, what did you guys think of Spectre of the Gun?
This is one of my least favorite episodes of the OS.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but I have to tell you why. This is so weird. Trust me. This is a third season episode. If you look at the third season and listen to the third season, it has a lot of episodes have a sense of what I can only call ennui. It's directed slowly, and the music is kind of downbeat. For me, even the scene that you're showing here, it makes me feel almost depressed. Just that red sky, the half-completed town, there's a sense of almost despair around this episode. This is me. This is a Keith thing. And I feel it a lot of third season episodes. So it's not that it's a bad episode, but it almost makes me feel downbeat in strange ways. It's almost like the combination of writing, the directing, the music. But at the same time, it's a really cool episode. The Malkotians, one of my favorite aliens in all of Star Trek, for all that we saw them for like 2 seconds, right?
Right.
I love them. And I do like the battle at the end, when the whole thing at the end, when they're marching. And talk about Western. It's so Western. John Ford could have directed that scene. Remember, the guys are walking, and it's so funny. In the way it's funny and exciting, the guys are just standing there staring into space, waiting for their buddies to come. And then they walk and they join, and then they join the next one. it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think it's cool. And just a quick note, real quick, because I'm thinking about it because it's on the screen. But a detail you'll notice that on all of the signs in the town, it has the Star Trek font for the lettering, and so you can see it in this one here, where which is kind of unusual, which I thought was kind of cool.
I have never noticed that before.
I didn't either.
Yeah, and I think the sort of foreboding sense of the episode, I think, works in its favor because they're there to be executed, essentially. Like they're having to live out this gunfight where they are not supposed to survive, and they have to figure out a way to survive it. And I think that it works really well. I think it's a cool story. But also, and something that I see repeated a lot about this episode is that they did the facades like this as a money saving thing.
Yes,
it was the third season, and I mean maybe that's true. I don't think I buy it though, because like in the '60s, like Western sets were like the easiest to come across. You know what I mean? Like how many Westerns? Like it's not hard to get a hold of a Western town in 1960s Hollywood. But this it's a very clear production choice. I think to do this, I think it's a deliberate design choice. Now whether it saved them money or not, I don't know.
Well, it probably did both, but I think even if they were saving money, they did it in a way that absolutely worked as part of the production.
Okay.
Either, and you have to wonder, was it written to be that way, or did they modify it because of expense? I don't know. Either way, it works.
Yeah, I think so too. And it makes it surreal. It's kind of like a dream of a Western.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Go right ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just going to get some comments. And we have Wayne saying, going totally off topic and off show. And that's quite all right, because we're going to be doing that too. Outland with Sean Connery was one of my favorite depictions of High Noon.
Totally.
That's very true. He's a sheriff on a station out in space or a mining colony.
Matt says, I think Spectre of the Gun is one of the best third season episodes.
No, that would be Cat's Paw.
That's second season.
Cat's Paw was third season.
Nope.
And he said one of.
Yep.
And then I was gonna. Oh wait, there's this one from Callie. Also, there are lots of cinematography that echoes westerns, the wide angles and the color schemes. Yes. And I know Saving Elaine's, because she leads us into a different show off of Trek, and that is, to me, Firefly is the ultimate space western show.
Yeah, I had the idea for this episode while I was watching Firefly.
There we go.
As a matter of fact. But yeah, I think, and Firefly does it more overtly.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Where they've got actual six shooters and they're wearing cowboy clothes and using cowboy jargon and things like that.
Right.
But I think it works. I think it's, as a stylistic choice, I think it's very effective and it makes Firefly very unique amongst other sci-fi shows.
And I'm just going to say that there are very few science fiction shows that can rival a Star Trek theme tune, but the Firefly one is probably my favorite ever. It is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it's one with lyrics that works, which Star Trek has never done.
Yep.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of examples. Obviously, there's the example of A Fistful of Datas, which is a very overt example of a space western because it's a holodeck adventure.
Right.
And I think it was Matt that pointed out that they call it the Ancient West in that one because it's even not just old anymore. Now it's ancient because
that's right.
They're 400 years in the future. But it's a cool episode, though. I think it's fun.
Do we want to take a quick break?
Yeah, I think we should.
Since we're a little bit past the halfway. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's. Since it's my birthday, I'm gonna play my ad again from last week.
Happy birthday!
Koslish Dach.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Looking forward to your books.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example from Voyager. And I mean,
I didn't think
the
of
first
one.
thing that springs to my mind is that first Kazon episode where they're beaming down to the waterless planet, and it's sort of,
That's exactly what I was going to say. Also,
yeah,
Okay.
yes, that has a very even like Callie was talking about, even the way that it's shot, the
Mhm.
color palette of those location scenes where they're out on
Caretaker.
that sort of desolate.
Look, I remembered an episode name.
Yay!
I don't know
And
why I
they're-
was pointing one.
And they're negotiating over water. That is, it's a little bit Mad Max, but it's also very Western.
Oh yeah, especially when they're they're walking up to, yeah, they definitely get a little Western swagger in them when they're walking across the desert and everything. I think it works.
Well, I think that's just because of walking in sand.
It could be.
And then you see the Kazon, and well,
But a lot of
Oh,
folks who were
well.
working on Trek in the '90s grew up watching TV westerns.
yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
for the original series, it was contemporaneous. Like they were doing TV westerns at the time, but then in the '90s, it's a bunch of guys who grew up watching TV westerns when they were kids and bringing those influences in.
Right. Another, jumping back to the original series, the other one I was thinking about, which is always one of my favorite episodes and one of my favorite scenes, is Arena with the introduction of the Gorn. And there's a whole thing that is incredible drama where Spock does not want to go after the Gorn ship. And he's trying to tell Kirk, just scare them, blah, blah, blah. And even though they've had a discussion in Kirk's quarters, later on the bridge, when the Gorn are going warp 6 and Kirk goes to warp 7, everybody's freaking out. And then Spock says, I thought maybe the hot pursuit would be enough. And then Kirk gets up and he says, it's a matter of policy. Out here, we're the only policemen and a crime has been committed. Do I make myself clear? That is straight up. He might as well be a marshal enforcing the law out there in the middle of nowhere. And that's what he's telling Spock. And then they even talk about other colonies, like other frontier towns that could be in danger. And I love that line. And that's definitely kind of Western influence.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that really where sci-fi and westerns really meld is that there's distances involved. Where if you're an Old West town, I mean, you're days or weeks away from the next Old West town, right? There's no one around the corner to come help you. Like you're out there on your own. And if you're out on a horseback in the middle of the desert, you're out there on your own. Maybe no one will find you. And you get that a lot, especially less so in the newer Star Treks because they always seem to be a hop, skip, and a jump away from home base. But in the older Star Treks, where even just the openings where you have the one lonely ship or the one lonely station, out there by itself. And like you said, Keith, like they're the only policeman around in that case, or oftentimes, they make a big point of the fact that they have to make their decisions. They're not going to you can't even radio back to base to find out what your orders are in time. They have to make their decisions out there, and that's something that I think is very prevalent in the Western genre because obviously in Westerns there is no calling back home, there is no signaling for help. You're out there on your own and making the decisions, and I think that
and if you are in a town, you are reliant on things like Pony Express, which takes time to get from a place to another place. And we're going to be doing a show coming up in a month or so, I guess it is, maybe a few weeks, where we're going to be talking about the Star Trek opening themes and all that stuff. I don't want to get too far into this, but that's one of the things that I love about the DS9 theme is that especially in the first 3 seasons, and especially that first time that you hear it, it sounds so isolated. It sounds like you are on a Western town that is cut off from everything else, that is, days or weeks horse ride away from anything else, and you are out there. And I love that theme, and that's part of why, because it's so evocative.
Yeah, and not to detour too much, but and that's one. I think that lonely frontier feel of the early seasons theme I think works really well, but also one of the few cases where they updated it and made it peppier, and it worked because by that point in the story, the station had become a much more of a hub of activity. From the storytelling, I think that worked very well.
Yes. Oh, we're going to get all into that when we do our show.
That's a little teaser for a few weeks from now.
I'm so excited about that one.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got a bunch of comments. Let me see where we are. I don't miss any. Good grief. People are really chatty tonight. I love it.
Excellent.
Where are we? Okay. Mark says, I love space and I love Westerns, but Firefly just did not resonate with me.
Oh, I love it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's good.
Wayne says, I noticed no one has mentioned any Enterprise shows with Western themes.
It's on my list, Wayne. North Star.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And actually mentioned that in our in our chat.
There you go.
So y'all are on top of it.
I love that. I like that episode. It
I do
makes
too.
sense. Yeah.
I do too. Wayne says, "Oh wait, I got that one. Sorry, I'm jumping around."
Ducks
And he
Charles'
also says,
shoe.
"Happy birthday, Alan." That's so sweet of you.
Wayne also said he ducked Charles's shoe for referencing Enterprise.
You're allowed to reference Enterprise if you must.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. North Star from Enterprise. It's a straight up one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's no pastiche about that. It is
No.
just dead on.
Yeah. They found a cowboy planet.
Right.
Yeah.
Bill says, oh, wait, that's not the comment I was looking for. Hang on. Mark says, Chakotay, quote, "I'm the only Indian in 70,000 light years and I can't start a fire."
I remember that one. That made no sense, but I remember that line.
You said Indian, not even Native American.
Yeah.
No, that was a thing back then.
Yeah.
These are the old days.
Yeah, and I mean that's
Mid-90s.
right. That's a detour we can also go down, but I mean that's Chakotay being a Native American is certainly evocative of Westerns as well.
Yeah, true. Very true. Let's see. Bill says, dang it. Hang on. I lost it. Bill says, "I love all the series. DS9 is my favorite." Well, I think you'll find a lot of camaraderie and that attitude on this show.
Yeah.
Elaine says, "I can definitely see DS9 as a Western now." Well, yeah, because you're seeing you will be seeing DS9 sometime soon.
Yeah, well, they're in season 1 right now.
Oh yeah, that's right. I couldn't remember. And then Bill says, "There's a wonderful podcast, Enterprise Splaining, that shows it some love and loving and hilarious criticism."
Yep.
Yeah,
and
that's a great
Enterprise
show.
Planning. Yeah, my friend Maria is on that show. I've been on it a few times.
And I was going to say Charles has been on there a few times.
And they're a sister podcast of ours on the ESO network. So definitely give Enterprise Planning some love. And I listen to Enterprise Planning all the time. I don't like Enterprise. That's how entertaining the show is. So it's a fun show to watch, whether you like the show they're talking about or not.
So I think when we put this episode out on the network, we should include their ads since we're talking about them anyway.
Exactly that. But going back to North Star for just a minute, I think the season 3 of Enterprise was a very good place to put it because, again, they're in sort of an isolated situation. Now, Enterprise throughout its run was always sort of out there on its own because there weren't any other Federation ships that could catch it. But especially in season 3, when they were in that, what was the Expanse?
Delphic Expanse.
Where they really were isolated, like inside a thing. Where, I mean, it's like the Old West philosophy where, like, you got to be a quick draw or you're Texas toast, you've got
Texas
toast. And you've got to be a little quicker on the draw on that sort of thing. And the original series was that way as well, whereas a little quicker to draw phasers and shoot the bad guys than they became later in the shows. Where, I mean, I think of a Western, a DS9 Western like Progress, where it's not about shooting any bad guys. It's about the character studies, where I think that you had a lot more of the shootout element on the, I say earlier, but earlier in the chronology anyway, like Enterprise and the original series.
Yeah. Right. Well, even in the cage / the menagerie, the illusion of Pike being back at home, he's got his horse. Was it Tango?
Yeah.
And and when they introduce Pike in that scene, the music sounds very much like a standard Western guitar chord. So absolutely Western sounding.
And that's something you've commented on several times, Keith, is when the captains get off the ships, the first thing they want to do is go live in a cabin with a horse, wood, chop wood.
Right.
Like very, very, very much, back at the old homestead.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. Here's a couple of good comments from Bill. He says, if TOS was sold to execs as wagon train to the stars, DS9 is Gunsmoke. But then he says, and with the father-son thing, DS9 had some riflemen, which we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Bill, that was riflemen is how they envisioned it, but Gunsmoke also works, of course.
Yeah, Gunsmoke, totally.
Yeah, and because it hits a lot of those archetypes. But and then just give a little shout out to the Cage. I mean, as far as just modernizing the Western, I mean, they made a point of Pike riding out on horseback and so forth, but he lived in Mojave, which by the future is a bustling city with 50 miles of parkland around it. It's not a desert anymore because we've sort of reclaimed that desert and turned it into this, futuristic city that you can see in the background while he's out in the parkland, which I thought is a good twist. If you're taking the Western archetypes and putting them in the future, is like they're in the Mojave Desert, but it's not a desert. It's just Mojave, the great bustling city with parkland around it.
Yeah. And in the OS, one of the other things they did that's reminiscent of Westerns is they mentioned so many times, it was so rare for a sci-fi show back then. So many times the Enterprise was carrying medicines and food. And there's so many times they talked about how these things were perishable. Right. And I watch a lot of Westerns still today. I'm on the Roku channel. I watch Wagon Train and Laramie and stuff a lot. And that's one of the things, again, what you're saying, Charles, with old Western towns, they're few and far between. So sometimes there's medicine they have to get to the town. Or there's certain food that they have to get there. Absolutely like Star Trek. If they're on the frontier carrying medicine from town to town with the Enterprise.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of old TV Westerns. My favorite of which is Have Gun Will Travel. Gene Roddenberry wrote like 30 episodes of that show. So if you want to see some, people I think like to criticize Gene Roddenberry as a scriptwriter, but watch his Have Gun Will Travel scripts, particularly I think it's called The Hanging Cross, is a very Roddenberryan story, and it is, and I mean it with really strong morals in it that you can sort of see the young Gene Roddenberry's mind at work in that episode, and things that would later play into Star Trek.
Fascinating. Going really outside of Star Trek, because we said this is other sci-fi as well. Has anybody seen the animated series Brave Star?
Yes.
Yeah, Brave Star was from the famous Filmation Studios behind the real Ghostbusters and US of Archie and a billion other things. And Brave Star takes place on a faraway planet. I could even sing the opening thing. It's got 3 sons that it deals with a native from Earth who is a Marshall Brave Star on a foreign planet where they have to mine this mineral called carium. And he is straight up a Marshall. He has a gun, which was a blaster back then. And it's a Western town. His kind of love interest, JD, is a lady. She's a judge, but she's got on Western garb. His mentor is a native guy who guides him. He has magical powers. It's so Western. That's the whole point of the show. It's Western.
Kind of like Firefly, and it's a very overt space Western.
Yeah.
There's cowboy hats and robot horses and that sort of thing.
Right. And his best friend is a cybernetic horse called 3030, who from a race of beings called equestroids, who turns from a horse into a 2-legged being. But it's a Western and it's fun. I've always enjoyed that series.
I have never heard of that, but I want to watch it.
It's cool. Brave Star.
And also, Keith, you mentioned Filmation, yes?
Yeah. Filmation.
If you're gonna rattle off names of shows that are examples of what Filmation put out, I don't think that anybody would ever have thought of US of Archie. That is not an obvious thing to.
I don't think anybody would know that one. Real Ghostbusters, US of Archie, Flash Gordon animated series. Oh my God, so many. US of Archie. Look it up, y'all.
Or don't. You won't be missing anything.
True. Sure.
So I forget the name of the episode, but there was that Prodigy episode where they found the planet of people who had based their lives around Starfleet, and they're pretending to be Starfleet officers and so forth. And I think that one has a little bit of a Western feel to me as well, where I don't know, there's just something about that episode that just this sort of has that you're coming across this sort of isolated culture out in the middle of nowhere that's got the very specific rituals, and I don't know, it's not an overt Western, but I think that episode has a bit of a Western flair to it, to me as well.
I can see that.
Okay, couple of comments.
Okay.
Bill says, I'm waiting for a Star Trek series to do an homage to Kelly's Heroes in a season that's mostly about a war. The Don Rickles style NCO could be a Ferengi.
Okay.
I just watched that movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And he says, I'd love to see some Starfleet admiral show up on a planet that his Marines couldn't take and see scrawled on the wall of a bank, "Suck it, we're rich, you know what's."
Okay.
That would be interesting. Mark says, Wild West COW. Boys of Moo Mesa cartoon is out of their out of Filmation. I get you. I have never heard of that.
I don't think it's Filmation, but it is it's just I think it's a cartoon. Well, I mean, obviously it's a cartoon, but yeah, it's I'm not familiar with that one. Wild West Cow or COW, Boys of Moo Mesa. I don't think it's Filmation production, but I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark.
Wayne says, didn't Filmation do the animated series?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Matt
They did.
confirms it in the next.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
All right. Callie says, I think there is always a sense of justice in a lawlessness space. They bring their morality to these undiscovered worlds, which could play into colonization. Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that with Star Trek, you get a few different variations on that. Sometimes it's we're more moral, right? And then what's going on here, we're having to help them solve their problem.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's flipped where we're not,
Right.
you know. And
Right.
I think they do some interesting things with that throughout Star Trek. But
Yes.
I don't know. One thing I think Star Trek does differently, obviously, we've talked about this a little bit already, just a little while ago, but that I don't know. I feel like there's like an old TV Western, generally speaking, your hero is going to be right. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Where I think that Star Trek is really more about challenging your preconceptions out there. With something like Arena, where which actually starts off very Westernish anyway, because you're out in the desert and you've got that very fort-looking outpost.
Yeah.
But over the course of that story, like Captain Kirk is after the bad guy, and he's gonna get the like Keith said, we're the only policeman out here. But then he has to challenge his own preconceptions by the end. And there are good, episodic Westerns that do the same thing. But I think Star Trek is certainly in that mold where, it's not always about catching the bad guy, but sometimes it's about realizing that the bad guy has a good reason. You know what I mean? Maybe we should talk some more, which I think is a very valuable lesson just for people generally.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because so many times, as you guys are saying, sometimes when you do the Western theme, just like you do other themes, it's so on the nose, it's not even funny, like North Star. But sometimes it's much more subtle. There was a movie called Cowboys and Aliens with Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig that does that. And there was a cartoon going back. Now, this is not Filmation. This is, I think, from the same people who did things like Thundercats. There was a cartoon called The Galaxy Rangers.
Okay.
And it was the same thing. It took people in the far future, probably 2,000-3,000 years in the future. And in that case, the Western theme is so cliched and over the top. Everybody pretty much is saying partner. And there's a guy, I think he's from Texas, and he has an accent, talk like this. And it's kind of hilarious. Sometimes they just hit you over the head with the Western. And sometimes you kind of lose the subtlety of what the Western can be, which makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Elaine says, Westerns are something that I've come to more as an adult. For a long time, my only Western experience was the musical Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Wow.
Okay.
That's amazing, Elaine. I couldn't escape Westerns growing up.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And Mark says that looks like that's supposed to be cowboys. The COW boys from whatever. Cowboys. I didn't even pick up on that when he posted it the first time. Is from Ruby Spears. I don't know what that is.
The people behind Thundar the Barbarian.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, those folks are really good.
Yeah.
I just want to say that, man, I am so appreciative of all the people who have been watching tonight and who have been chatting with us, because this has been one of the best discussions that we've had, because so many people have gotten involved with some really, really thoughtful and insightful comments. So thank you all so much for participating.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And throw a personal thing in. We talked a little bit about the concept of colonialism and natives and stuff like that. I'm a Black man who has my feelings about American expansionism. I'm born in Fort Worth, Texas. Western culture is in my blood. I grew up 3 miles from the stockyards in Texas, which is one of the starting points of what was called the old Chisholm Trail, which what we're talking about is where they would take cattle across the country and all this kind of stuff. So the Western themes, the good of the Western theme, and Alan, you mentioned the Pony Express. If you know how many books I read about the Pony Express coming up, the romanticism of this one man riding across dangerous territory to get the mail there. So for me, the Western theme cannot help but be kind of an exciting one when you talk about that in Star Trek. So it's really been fun for me.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fun conversation. I think this could have been longer. We didn't even get to the Paradise Syndrome, for instance.
Any other space westerns either.
We talked about Firefly, and we talked about several.
We mentioned Firefly.
Right.
Or we didn't talk about the original Westworld with Yul Brynner.
No, that's true.
Ooh.
All right,
I didn't think about that one.
We'll do Space Westerns too, maybe after
that could be my episode.
Maybe after Starfleet Academy.
Yeah, that'll work.
I still have to have an episode idea.
Well, we
That's
still have 2 to fill before
That's true.
Academy.
Okay, well, maybe it's coming sooner than I thought then.
Hey, maybe that'll be fun.
All right. Well, Keith, where can people find more of you?
You can find me on Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
And how about you, Alan?
CosmicCreative.com, KOZMIC Creative.com. And there you can see some information about the 2 new books that I have coming out. And they are momentarily on hold until the new Doctor Who spinoff airs in December. And as soon as that's out, I will finish that last chapter and get the book published. But I am already working on my next release,
Okay.
Nice.
which I'm shooting for January 2027 for a very specific reason.
And how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
Yeah, if you're in the Atlanta area, you can come see us doing some adult shows here coming up. We're doing on December 4th, which is a Thursday, so we'll be absent that night because we'll be at the Sinful Variety Show, Jesus' birthday party with strippers, performing. Getting ready for the holidays. It's the holiday season. What else are you gonna do?
That's right.
Also, we'll be at the Puck and Puppet Show at the Center for Puppetry Arts on December the 13th. That should be a lot of fun. And I think that's all we've got for December, unless I'm forgetting anything.
What day is December 13th?
A Saturday.
Oh, I love the Center for Puppetry Arts, and I haven't been in 2 years.
Well, we perform there.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And where else will find us?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. So check out Monkeying Around. And do you have a closing for us this week?
I do.
Yay!
I'm gonna go rustle me up some grub with all the fixins.
Yes, good job.
That was amazing.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. Join us every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, except for next week. We're talking about Star Trek, legacy Star Trek topics, or the new Star Trek episode. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. So live long and prosper.
Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy trails.
Happy trails to you.
Yeah.